you'll be moving back and forth. Okay, whenever.
Yeah, we are ready.
You're ready? You're on?
Yeah.
You're working?
Yes.
Yeah, I was trying to remember the first time that I met Rinpoche, and I think it was in Tushita, which is the Dharma Center just up in the hills in Dharamsala. And my friend Fabrizio took me up there. He was a long-time member of Rinpoche's community. And I think I'd heard of Rinpoche before, but I hadn't really been in his presence. And I remember being so incredibly taken by the palpable joy coming out of him. And just wondering, how can he be so, not just happy, but joyous and engaging all the time? What an extraordinary place to be. And everyone, all the other students that were up there also had this feeling that there actually is another way one can live if one really works with our negative emotions, afflictive emotions. It generates the beginnings of real wisdom and patience, kindness. But he seemed to have that, and the whole community was absorbed into that point of view as well. I think Rinpoche magnetized positive situations and brought the best out of people, which is what a great teacher does. He certainly was not captive to the 8 worldly dharmas that most of us are, which are based on kind of an egocentric view of our place in the universe and in society. I don't think there was any rule he was afraid to break and do it in his own peculiar and sometimes very eccentric way. Obviously a great scholar, someone who was respected and revered by the geshes and you know the great honored scholars in the Tibetan Buddhist system. I know at one point he asked for teachings from my teacher, Chunglaratu Rinpoche, who had very important lineages. And he treated him like he was the Buddha, although Rinpoche had given up his robes at that point. I don't think I ever saw a flash of ego from him, or a sense that the lowest of any of us wasn't worthy of his greatest love and affection. Later on, we went on a pilgrimage, and one of his great friends and one of his great teachers, Riba Rinpoche, was who ended up living with me for many years. We were on a pilgrimage, and I remember being on the bus, and every time we passed water, he'd have the bus stop, and we would have to get off the bus, and there would be an hour of prayers and blessings for all the creatures in the water, because that water was going to eventually flow around the world and go into the oceans, and that prayer, like at a prayer wheel, it'd be a water prayer wheel, that these blessings would circulate through our world. And that extensive view that prayer has real meaning in the outside world, but it has extraordinary meaning in the inner world of each of us, that we are capable of blessing ourselves into a kind of magnificence that is transcendent and wholly unexpected, that one can actually live that way. You know, I always found great solace with Rinpoche, again, that he always seemed to have time. And I don't know, he would take 24 hours and turn it into 48 and get so much done. I'm sitting here with Roger, who is kind of left with the responsibilities of actually making things happen in the world. After Rinpoche had the idea or had acquiesced and said, yes, let's do that. But the extensive projects and good deeds that came, not just inspired by Rinpoche, but creating an environment where people also were generating great ideas and commitments. Very hardworking people. There are people who've been around him for, I think, certainly 40 years, maybe more, 50 years, some.
Yeah.
Who've turned out to be incredibly skillful and capable people who are making this all work. I think other organizations admire enormously what FPMT has done. The way Rinpoche works, what he's able to accomplish, what the entire group is able to accomplish. I know in my own world, I see we look to how they do it, and I can't figure out how they actually do it either. Rinpoche also was a bulldog in not letting go of an idea that he thought was of value, and would find a way to make it work, would find a way to, the money would show up, and the causes and conditions would come together, and the government would give their approval, or whatever was required. And almost every project, not everyone, but almost all of them, would come together in a kind of a magical way that everyone said, it's impossible, there's no way that could happen. His teaching schedule, I know, was pretty extraordinary. And his, I think, commitment to give, like His Holiness the Dalai Lama, to give personally, one-on-one to people as much as possible, but also to fulfill the requirements of the initiation and doing it properly, and however long it takes. I remember one kind of extraordinary dinner. Of course, Roger, you were there. The first time I think I had dinner with Rinpoche in Bodh and I was very honored to be invited to dinner, and my friend Fabrizio was there, and Rinpoche is really known for his incredible food. He's a vegetarian. How long has he been vegetarian?
I think almost all his life. Almost all.
But when you first met, was he?
Yeah,
he was vegetarian.
Vegetarian, yeah.
Well, those early pictures of him, he was so skinny. He probably was a vegetarian then.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I think from quite a young age. And then on the odd occasion, he was sort of forced to eat meat. Like if one of his teachers said, "Please eat," then he would play around with it for a while.
He'd pick at it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I remember having this dinner, and we had prepared, and I was kind of excited to have dinner with Lama Zopa Rinpoche. So we came over to his residence, and he welcomed us, and he was always so charming. I mean, he was always so, it was a delightful experience to be around him. And he had to sit down, the food came, and he said he started a prayer. And the prayer went on, and it went on, and he was blessing all the beings in the universe, and all the microbes, and all the small creatures inside of our bodies and outside of our bodies, and all the immaterial beings and spirits here. And then he went on to other planets, and all those beings on those planets, and another alternate universe, and those planets, and another solar system, and all the beings in that. And I think about 2.5, 3 hours went by, and the food was still sitting there. And on one level, I wish we had been able to eat the food, but he had fed us so completely with the extraordinary prayers, visionary prayers that he gave us, that it was okay. I remember too when we were on pilgrimage with the two Rinpoches. Lama Zopa Rinpoche never slept, everyone knows around him knows that he's just. I never saw him sleep. Did you ever see him sleep?
In more recent times, yeah.
Yeah.
More recent times, yeah. When after the stroke, yeah.
After
his stroke,
yeah.
yeah.
Well, before that, it was again. We were on pilgrims. I think we were in. We were in the Ganga. I think we had gone to the river.
Yeah.
And again, Rinpoche had asked us to come, and I wanted to go and say goodnight to him. You know, we were going to see a lot and do a lot of things the next morning. Invited in, and he wanted to talk, so we started talking, and it was 10 o'clock, 11, 12, 1. I can't stay up anymore. It's 2 o'clock in the morning, and we're going to get up at 6 to go, you know, another leg of this journey, and I almost had tears in my eyes. I said, Rinpoche, I've got to go to sleep. I really have to go to sleep. And he said, okay, you go. It's okay. And I think he held Fabrizio back at that point because he still wanted to talk. Rinpoche also, he loved to invite ideas, was my experience with him. He had his own ideas of, you know, possibilities. He had kind of creative, visionary plans and possibilities in many different directions. But he also was open, at least to me in my experience with him, of hearing another idea, or hearing how you might make that idea better or be more skillful or whatever. He was always learning, I guess, in that sense, of how I can get this done. He might not know exactly how to get there, but he was always kind of clarifying the vision of possibility, which is how you get things done. If you can visualize it clearly, the universe will give you the energy to make that happen. You know, there were periods that I didn't see Rinpoche very much. And then when we'd meet, it was like, you know, there was no time had passed in between. I think that's a sign of real friendship. I felt like I was known by him. I think everyone felt that way, that he actually saw you and embraced you with all of your faults and all of your craziness. And he himself was pretty crazy, which was fun. It was fun to be around Rinpoche. He was mischievous and naughty sometimes, and completely devoted to his teachers, completely devoted to His Holiness the Dalai Lama. I remember once, I might even have been complaining to him that I had worked so hard on something and for a Dharma group and whatever, there was frustration and whatever. And I remember he was in Bodh Gaya, and no, it wasn't Bodh Gaya, it was in Mungad. And His Holiness was flying into, oh God, what's the town on the ocean, which you fly into to get to Mungad?
Oh, Goa. Goa?
It's a resort town. Goa.
Goa, yeah.
Goa. What did you just say? Did you say
Goa?
Goa?
I said Goa.
That weird accent of yours?
Yeah, exactly.
So Rinpoche, I think he was actually organizing some of the teachings there. I think he was actually inviting Lama. Right. And His Holiness was flying into Goa, and I think His Holiness was going to spend the night in Goa and then come in the morning the next day. It was about a 6-hour drive to get there. So Rinpoche got in the car and drove there from Mungad to meet His Holiness. He didn't even meet His Holiness. He drove there. His Holiness has gone to sleep already. He got in the car and came right back. There was no issue, no problem, no complaining. The rest of us would be, you know, come on. I just drove 6 hours to say hello. You can't even acknowledge it. That was the man that I experienced, is that he had a sense of what was right in terms of being honorable and respectful, honoring tradition, but also having fun with tradition and the ability to break a silly rule to make a point, or to be entertaining to himself and to everyone else. I'm trying to think of the last time that I met Rinpoche.
Maybe Bodh maybe.
It would have to be Bodh Gaya.
Yeah.
I did have the great pleasure of staying at the Root Institute when I went to Bodh Gaya for teachings with His Holiness, and it was once a year would be kind of the gathering of all the tribes would come to Bodh Gaya, and Rinpoche's Root Institute was kind of the island of tranquility in all the craziness of 500,000 people who had come from everywhere.
Yeah.
And you kind of savored that no matter how congested and crazy and circus-like this whole atmosphere was, if you could get to the Root Institute after a teaching, you could have a cup of tea there and relax. And I think those are the times, when Rinpoche was in repose also, and in his own residence there, and I think even from his side there was a sense of being relaxed, that all of his teachers and his contemporaries and other Rinpoches and Lamas and Tulkus were there as well. Just a sense of well-being in the perfect universe that had evolved in the fullness of Tibetan Buddhism. But it was there, I think there was the most relaxed moments of having lunch with Rinpoche, or just seeing him at an event, walking. There's times that we would walk around the stupa, and everyone knew Rinpoche, and a lot of the time everyone knew me. So it was a kind of a circus as we walked around the stupa, did the kora. And he never much paid attention to anything. He was all kind of oblivious, not because he was naive of the situation, but he just didn't care. It had little importance to him. The only reason it would be important at all is he would want to maximize how much joy and love and concern and happiness he could bring to others. So he was pretty skillful of using his energies in that kind of positive and skillful, effective way. I had known Kandrila before. Actually, we had dinner the other night, and we were recalling when we first met in Sarnath, and it was on a pilgrimage. And I remember that Rinpoche had gotten the gatekeeper who had the key at the stupa in Sarnath to see the holy relics of the Buddha there. I don't know if you remember this. But we were there with the Singaporeans,
yeah,
and me and Fabrizio, and I think that was it. I mean, you and the other guys from Kopan and Rinpoche Rinpoche, but it was really Lama Zopa's thing. So he'd gotten them to open it up, and it was at
I remember
night.
now, yeah.
And there was, a line of us, and I was a big shot, so I was kind of in the front of the line. And I'm about to be shown the relics, and I hear this hysteria behind me. We all kind of turned around because it was like someone being attacked, but it was actually someone having some kind of a seizure.
Yeah.
And it was this little Tibetan girl.
Oracle, maybe Oracle?
Well, she was an oracle.
Yeah.
It was her. It was Kandrila.
That's right, yeah.
It was her. That was the first time I met her. And it made such an impression. We all were like looking at her like, what is going on here? I remember Rinpoche kind of took one look over there and sized up what was happening and kind of moved on with the show. But that made a huge impression on me. She remembered that completely, that moment. And I asked her, I said, how did you end up in that line of Singaporeans in the middle of the night with me and the two Rinpoches opening up?
Yeah, exactly.
How did you end up there?
Yeah.
And she says, I'm magical, that's how. But that obviously had become a very important part of Rinpoche's life. I remember the excitement of being in Rinpoche's residence, and the expectation that Kanjala was coming. You know, it was a kind of a palpable excitement that she was on her way. I think it's extremely rare in any culture when there's someone as clearly developed as Rinpoche was, and worked so hard on himself, and was highly embraced and respected within his own community, was so highly respected and embraced in the outer community as well, the Westerners and foreigners he came in contact with. And to have that kind of charisma, but then on top of that, to be a visionary who was skillful enough to get things done. That combination is extremely rare. His Holiness the Dalai Lama obviously has that. I think in many ways that combination of Lama Zopa Rinpoche and His Holiness was, they lived in that vibrational universe of truly wise and compassionate people that had it through experience. It was in every cell of their bodies. But were not outside of the world or divorced from the world or living in a cave, but were very much in the world and very much in the space of us mortals who are still living samsaric realities, that they wanted to change us from this hallucination we're in, and completely capable and energized to get into our hallucination to help us break it. The combination of all those things, of personal development, commitment, completely pure motivation to help others, and then have the skill to do it. Wow, that's unbeatable.
Yeah, yes. Yeah. I remember His Holiness would often say that actually, if I need to get something done, if I ask Rinpoche, I know it will get done.
And yeah, Roger just said if His Holiness wanted to get something done, he'd ask Lama Zopa to do it. And he wouldn't have to follow up.
No.
He would just get done.
Yeah.
No, and it's actually it's kind of a rarity in the Tibetan world. Kind of self-movers. He didn't need a committee to figure out what was going to be done. He figured it out.
Yeah.
Found a way to do it, and he had. I'm talking to Roger here, but Roger was the guy in the end that was then being told, "Okay, you make it work."
Sort of like that.
Yeah. But it was, you know, that maybe I should get into that combination too, that the partnership and trust that Rinpoche had in Roger. I think we all marvel at how Roger is still functioning in the world right now. I know you don't have all of your brain cells, but you've got a lot left.
Not much.
But I mean, this is just an extraordinary accomplishment of what they've been able to accomplish, and obviously it's not just money. It's something else. The money can get you so far, but it's not deep. Money won't take you deep.
That's right. Yeah.
It's a genuine, vast motivation to get you deep, and what people respond to. People respond to rich people and powerful people, but it's not deep. When the money's gone, the respect is gone too. When the power is gone, the respect is gone. You know, Rinpoche's power and his wealth and his treasure was something so ineffable, undescribable, that you could only feel it with your heart. Couldn't measure it other than feeling it and feeling the purity of it. So many of these Tibetan lamas have that, but certainly Lama Zopa was right up there at the top of that. I mean, I don't think I ever met anyone with more bodhicitta, active bodhicitta than Lama Zopa Rinpoche. Undeniable. Yeah. And there were so many circumstances he put himself into that most of us would, in the end, not be able to handle it. we'd either have breakdowns or
Yeah, exactly.
or run away. And obviously he had physical challenges too, and he made his way through them and still was extremely active
Yeah.
with all of those issues, that the strokes and kind of the speech impediment sometimes that he had that was a challenge. He still found his way to be functioning at an extremely high level at all times.